So shall we get started?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So names look familiar. One person is new. James, were you at the last session? Or maybe just James hasn't left. Um, H, Shay, or Bath Hay? Hello? Are you there? And hello again, Patrick.
Hello, whoops, I'm here.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so Khalid, welcome. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Khalid.
Khalid, high school math teacher, geometry at Western High School here at Clark County.
You're going to have to speak just a bit louder for me.
So my name is Khalid El Jabari. I'm a geometry teacher at high school at Clark County.
You're a geometry teacher. Oh, okay. Well, interesting. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And apparently, James's picture is up, but he's not with us. And of course, Patrick, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Patrick Whitehead. I am a economics teacher at Fernley High School up in Northern Nevada. And also listening in is another Patrick from Lyon County School, because we're both going to be presenting a session after this one. So he's listening, but he's not attached to the video right now.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome. All right. Well, let's get started. So I'm going to do share screen and do the obligatory PowerPoint. Okay, so let me kind of give you a little bit of background. My guess is none of you were alive when Reagan was president. Am I correct?
I'm 1980.
So you were an infant.
I was about 7 when he rolled out of office.
Okay. Khalid, am I right?
Actually, I was 1980, same.
But you were young, yeah.
I was
And
at that time.
H. Bechet? Okay, well, all right. I'm guessing I'm not getting an answer there. So let me tell you a story. I was at a conference in California. It was California Council of the Social Studies Conference. And you may or may not know that the Reagan Presidential Library is in California. So naturally, they have a booth at the conference for social studies teachers. So I walked up to the booth and I said, you know what? When I first started teaching economics, Reagan was president. And I remember Reagan having his televised addresses to the nation, and they were called by Time Magazine Econ 101. And I said, we really should put together lessons based on Reaganomics, because for a while there, it was really kind of the stuff to talk about. So let me just ask you, Patrick and Khalid, have you ever heard of the term supply side economics?
Yes. I teach the theory in my classes. Yeah.
Oh, so you'd still teach it, because most textbooks don't even cover it anymore because it's not the flavor of the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of funny because for a long time, it was part of the flavor of the year was to talk about supply side economics. As a matter of fact, what I discovered, because I use the traditional Keynesian type textbooks, that the Keynesians even adopted supply side but they used it as saying, well, infrastructure investment, investment in education, all of those are supply side. When the Reaganomics stuff was not that, of course, it was incentives to private enterprise to produce more, but it was the flavor of the year. And so I suggested to them that they would do something like that. And finally, it was agreed to. So my colleague at the California Council of the Economic Education, Joshua Mitten and I wrote 3 lessons on economics of the Reaganomics 101. That's what it's called. But what we've discovered is that if we want people to enroll in these sessions at conferences, you don't call it Reaganomics 101 unless you're in Texas or you're in where I was. I did it in Montana. So I did it in Montana, I did it in Texas, and they'll show up. But if you do it in California or Florida, you better call it something else. So we call it fun, and we call it fun in-class activities illustrating inflation, unemployment, and fiscal policy, which is essentially Reaganomics 101. So let's talk a little bit about the sessions. So this is what I remember seeing on TV. Back in the day, I don't know if any of you listened to Sirius XM. Do any of you listen to Sirius XM radio? No? Khalid, probably not.
I'm cheap. I listen to free FM and AM radio
Okay.
and podcasts.
Okay. All right. By the way, you're not cheap. You're just economically wise.
Exactly.
Right. The marginal benefit is less than the marginal cost. We're economists here. We're going to talk about it that way. So anyway, back in the day, I listened to because I also do a session on the using YouTube videos and stuff for teaching economics, and so I listen to Sirius XM all the time, the comedy channels, to see if I can come up with some funny routines that we can use for economics. And there is a routine that is done on. They have something that is with Jeff Foxworthy, and I don't know if you know who he is, but he does something like "You must be a redneck" kind of thing. He's a Southern kind of comedian, and he talked about when he was a kid, there were only 3 channels on TV, and if the president was on, there was nothing else to watch. And so back in 1978, when Reagan became president, he would show up on TV and for 20 minutes talk about stuff like this, which, as I said, was something that clued me into talking about it in class. And so it's what got me started on doing these Reaganomics lessons. So what I'm going to talk about today is, what is Reaganomics? What were the I'm doing what's commonly called death by PowerPoint. I'm reading to you the bullets. You can read the bullets, right? You don't need me to read them to you. Essentially, I'm going to cover what you can see there on the screen, right? Can you all see it? I can't hear you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you. You didn't attend my last one. Okay, so here are the lessons. Reagan's opening act. And so these are the 3 lessons that are available. If you come to a live session, you'll get these in printed form. But of course, everything's online nowadays. So all of these are available online, and I'm going to bring them up for you. And again, I'll provide, if you fill out this survey at the end, if you fill out the Google form that I have at the end, you'll be entered in a drawing for a $50 gift card. And by the way, those of you who have attended this twice will get 2 entries. So good luck to you, Patrick. And so we're gonna talk about Reagan's Opening Act, which essentially just covers what the economy was facing when he was elected. Then in lesson 2, we're going to cover his plan. And then in lesson 3, we're going to do an evaluation. And so here are what the lessons are going to cover. Each lesson has a snapshot which describes what the lesson is about. It covers the key concepts. It provides the learning objectives. It describes the procedure. It gives you links to videos and then articles and documents. And what's really cool about the lessons is that the documents are accessible at the Reagan Library. So if you are still doing Common Core, and I don't know if Common Core is the flavor of the year now, are you still, is Common Core still an issue for you folks?
For social, at least in Nevada, we redid our standards in 2016, 2017. So anything that was required on those were embedded into it. A lot of the skill standards reflect a lot of that, but we're using Nevada standards. So.
Okay, so if I recall, and you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, but Common Core really encourages students to get into source documents. And that's what's the power of this particular these lessons, is because it takes you right to the source documents in the Reagan Library. And there'll be links directly into the Reagan Library for these source documents. Within the lessons, we have worksheets, web-based research, videos, and interactive simulations. And I just did death by PowerPoint, but there you go. All right, so lesson 1. So I'm going to bring up lesson 1. And so here's what we do. Reagan's address to the nation is where Reagan describes the situation of the economy when he was president, when he in his first term as president. The term stagflation, is that a term that's familiar to any of you? Just say yes or no. Shauna, you type it up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, get it. Yeah, we know that. Well, at least I do.
Okay.
A little bit older.
Okay, so a lot of us don't, a lot of our students don't even know what stagflation is, because we were blessed for a really long amount of time to have very moderate inflation, less than 2% per year. It's only been recently that we've seen stagflation come back. And it doesn't seem like, at least from what I'm reading, that it doesn't seem like we're having the stag part of the inflation. We're having the inflation, but not the stag part of it, the stagnation inflation. But regardless, the speech is 20 minutes long. The good news is, what you can do is you can do it one of 2 ways, and we encourage you to do this within the lesson. You can do it one of 2 ways. You can either assign this in advance, have your students watch the video. We provide the transcript of the video, of the speech. And apparently it didn't get done, but it will be done. I converted the speech into a Word document with line numbers so that you can direct your students to the line numbers in the speech that describe the answers on the worksheet. Because you're asked, what is all this going on? But the lessons are going to have your students kind of identify what the economy was like when he became president, what it was like prior to him becoming president, and what it's like today, so that the students can kind of get a feeling of what's going on. So let me show you the lessons. Okay, so you share. Okay, so you can all see Reaganomics 101, Lesson 1, Opening Act. And so let me just kind of go through it. And by the way, as I said, these are all available on the Reagan website, and I'll send you the links. So as you can see, it tells you here are the videos, and these are live links to the videos. We do short videos as well. Patrick, you remember you mentioning Crash Course?
Yes.
So there's his Crash Course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we use him. And then we have supplemental videos. And then we have articles for your students to read. And here's the transcript. Here's the teacher version to the worksheet that you give your students, which gives you how you get the answers, or you can direct your students to the answers. But the most fun thing in these things is, as we said, is that, and here's the worksheet, so you can have your students do it either as a homework, do it in class, whatever works best for you. And we do an inflation in-class exercise, and we've created what we call Reagan bucks. So you can print these up and give them to your students, and essentially the Reagan bucks are just, and I'm sure you've seen these experiences. You have an economy that has a certain amount of goods. To make it more realistic, we have the economy grow, but we have the supply of money in the economy grow by more, so that students can see how prices get bid up. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that. So that's one of the in-class exercises. You can do this without even doing the Reaganomics. If you want to have your students understand and experience how inflation occurs from the money side, then it's a good experience to use. And then we also have one on unemployment, and the unemployment session, let's see, the unemployment one is, I should mention, if you're teaching an AP class, you can have your students do some things on how to do the price index. So you can use that's in the lesson. And if you want to teach the supply side economics part of it, you might want to think about talking to the students about how marginal tax rates affect take-home income or after-tax income. This is kind of a fun one, the unemployment exercise. You show a video on defining the unemployment rate, and another video on the types of unemployment, and you have your students do an interactive thing where they come up in front of the room and each one is assigned a different type of unemployment, and whether they're part of the labor force or not part of the labor force. And this is kind of fun because when we exposed this to teachers, and they said, well, I think our students would really love being in front of the room swimming like this, because what they're doing is they're waiting to get into the labor force and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of it's fun, right? And it's a good way to get your students to be involved in the and as always, we have enhancements in the sessions. Okay, so that's lesson one. Any questions about lesson one or comments? Or you're frowning, Patrick. That's frightening.
Oh no, I'm looking at the site right along with you. There's
Oh, okay, good.
there's a lot of stuff in here. I didn't know it was all there.
Yeah. Okay. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go to lesson two. Okay, so lesson two is where we introduce what Reaganomics is. And so again, it's a video. It's like I said, these are 20-minute videos. And I'm not sure students will sit through a 20-minute video in class. I'm not sure I'm seeing nods. I'm not sure students will watch a 20-minute video at home if you do it as an assignment at home. I really don't know. But what you can do is, if you want, you can go to the parts of the video that are most useful. What I kind of like about showing the Reagan videos is that there's only been one other president who I think has been the great communicator like Reagan, and that's Barack Obama. And it's kind of neat to show students that there are presidents who can address the country in a way that the common person can understand. And we don't seem to see that very much in our presidents. And so it might be just useful, kind of like to say, well, here's an example of a president who kind of connects with the folks, especially those of you who teach government along with economics. It could just be a very useful thing just for a short period. And remind your students that before Reagan was president and governor of California, he was an actor. So maybe he just acquired this ability to communicate from being an actor. But anyway, back to the sessions. So I'm going to take us to the next lesson. Okay, so here's lesson two, which is the plan. And so again, in the plan, we're going to have video, worksheets, and then interactives. And so again, as always, we go, and by the way, these are California standards, but you know what? The California standards are pretty similar to the other standards. Have any of you heard of the term Laffer curve?
Yes.
Anybody else? Good. Well, then this could be a useful thing to you. Art Laffer was, and by the way, Art Laffer is still alive. Art Laffer was one of the advisors to Reagan. And so you have a couple of videos there where Art Laffer kind of talks about the Laffer curve. And in the lesson, by the way, you're even shown the original Laffer curve. which was drawn on a napkin at a restaurant. That's in, there you go with, your Common Core. That's a source document that's in the Reagan Library. So, anyhow, the Laffer curve is kind of an interesting concept. The idea is, for those of you who are not familiar with it, the idea is there is a marginal tax rate at which individuals are no longer interested in earning an extra dollar of income. Remember how our tax rates work. Within our current federal income tax, if you earn zero to a certain amount of money, you pay no tax on that income. Any income over that certain amount of money to another amount of money, you're going to pay some marginal tax rate, let's say 5%. After you've reached that second level, if you earn another amount of money to the third level, you might pay 10%. And if you earn from that third level to a fourth level, that additional rate of income is taxed at, let's say, 20%, and so on. In other words, we have tax brackets in our federal income tax system that get that increase as income increases. The marginal tax rates increase as income increases. Well, when Reagan was elected president, the marginal tax rate on the highest bracket was 70-something%. When I talk to my students about supply side economics, and the lessons address this, how much of an incentive do you have to earn an extra dollar if 70 cents of that dollar is going to be paid to the government, and you only get to keep 30%? It's a valid question to ask. Perhaps if you live in a state like California, where we have pretty high marginal tax rates, you could ask the same question. And so the lessons address that for students. And one of the things that Reagan proposed was to lower the marginal tax rates. And so what we do in the lesson for the students, and especially if our math teacher still with us? No, I think he left us, didn't he? Khalid, are you still with us? Yes, Khalid, you're still with us. We ask our students to actually do some computations based on marginal tax rates in the lessons, and ask them, as your income goes up, would you or would you not be willing to pay more? And so, would you be willing or not willing to work an extra amount of time and money to earn this extra income? And so that's what the Laffer curve was about, and that's pretty much one of the fundamental features of Reaganomics, was just dropping the marginal tax rates. And so that's what one of the lessons is. So as you can see, it's here and how you do it. And there you go. These are the tax rates that existed prior to the change in tax policy. And then what we do is we do in the lesson, let's start dropping the marginal tax rate to lower and lower amounts and see what happens to tax revenue as we do it. And so that's our session. That's how we do it. Okay, so the other thing we do and this is something that is kind of fun, is we do a productivity exercise. And again, you can use this exercise without Reaganomics. It's one of the ways to illustrate marginal productivity. And those of you who teach economics, I'm assuming you know what marginal productivity is. But for those of you who don't, marginal productivity is the additional output that comes from the additional input. And so normally we think of the additional output of labor that comes from an additional input of labor. And one of the ways of increasing the marginal product or marginal productivity of labor is to give labor more machines to work with, which is the whole view of supply side economics. Give people more machines to work with. In other words, invest to create more capital, physical capital to produce more. So this exercise is kind of interesting, and it's linked to the concept of tax cuts. And we use pizza as the example. So what you do is, and I don't know whether any of you have ever done this exercise, which is how the exercise of how specialization in the division of labor results in greater output. Have any of you done that exercise? Well, it's either yes or no. You haven't done it, Shauna? Okay, well, this is in here. I would highly recommend you do it. I did it with paper airplanes. And the way you do it is you tell your students, each of you is going to make a paper airplane, and it has to be to this specification, and it has to fly, which when you want to really get your class going, and what a wonderful, back in the day when everything was printed, it was a great way to get rid of stuff you got in your mailbox that you never kept. And you just bring it to class and have them make paper airplanes, and they just have a ball. And then what you do is you say, okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to specialize. You're going to divide up into 3 teams, teams of 3, I mean, and one is going to fold it, the next is going to make the wings, and then the third is going to fly it. And what generally happens in the exercise is that ultimately you get more output as a result of specialization and the division of labor. Well, this exercise does pizzas. So we start with, you're going to make pizzas, and each of you is going to make a pizza on your own. So you give them a paper plate that, just a small, like 8-inch paper plate or smaller. And you say to them, this is going to be your form. You give them a piece of paper. You draw out the piece of paper, put a line around it, and then you cut it out individually. And then it's going to be a pepperoni pizza. So you give them pens, and they're going to color in the pepperoni on the pepperoni pizza. And you give them a certain amount of time, and how many pizzas are they going to make? So that's number 1. Obviously, not going to make very many. Then what you're going to do is you're going to have them specialize. So they specialize by, one person is going to do the tracing, the next person is going to cut, and the next person is going to draw on the pizzas, a pepperoni. Obviously, hopefully, not obviously, but hopefully it's going to increase the output. Then what you're going to do is then you're going to have the Reaganomics kick in, but you don't have to. Like I said, you could do this without doing the Reaganomics. What you can do is say, all right, now we're going to invest in machinery, and we're going to have pre-cut pizzas. The pre-cut pizza is paper plates. And so now what they're going to do is they're going to each get a paper plate, and each is going to color in the pepperoni. And then finally, we're going to have a pepperoni, we're going to do a pepperoni slicing machine that installs it on the pizza. And so then you give them, the round red stickers and see what happens to output. And so it's just kind of a fun way to let your students see that investment specialization, division of labor, and investment will increase output. And if you want to link it to supply side economics, you can, but then again, you don't have to. And so that's what this lesson's all about. And as you can see, you're given all these wonderful ideas and how to do it with grids that you put up on the board, and the tax rates in 1981, the tax rates in 83, tax rates in 88, and then the productivity sheets that are linked to it. And again, you can use these. Again, round one is without the investment. Round four is with the investment and division of labor. Okay, so that's that. The final lesson lesson 3 is the retrospective lesson. What President Reagan did after the election, but prior to the inauguration of George W. Bush, he went to the nation, again in one of his 20-minute speeches, and he said, here's what I wanted to accomplish when I was elected 8 years ago, and here's what I accomplished. And so what we do in this lesson is we evaluate whether or not what he said in the speech was correct. And so that's the last lesson. And so we'll do the last lesson. Okay, so we'll do new share, back to this. Lesson 3. Now, what's really kind of interesting about this lesson is, again, what we do is we give them worksheets where they compare what the economy was like when Reagan was elected versus what the economy was like when he left. And here we give them access to FRED, which is Federal Reserve Economic Data website. Have any of you used FRED?
I use a lot of the charts, the historic charts and things like that when we're looking at comparing things like inflation rates and that.
Good. And because I highly recommend FRED. And what I used to do is, obviously, when you introduce new topics to students in class, you introduce the topic of the unemployment rate. What you do is you tell them, again, like I said in my prior session, I always had my students look at the topic before I started talking about it, either using their cell phones, their laptops, or their tablets, and say, let's go to FRED and find out what the current unemployment rate is. Or let's go to FRED and let's look at what the current price of petroleum is, or those sorts of things. And so FRED is one of the best sources, accumulators of economic data there is. And so rather than doing a web search for economic data, just go to FRED. It's probably there. And by the way, not just for US data, but for the entire world data. It's really a very good website. So again, that's where we take them. That's where this click here will take them. And so we have the students go ahead and down below look into what has happened, what was the economy was like and what it was not like. When he was started and what the economy was like when he ended. So, and we have to do some kinds of things that did individuals get better off or worse off during his term? One of the things that we haven't done but was pointed out to us is that one teacher at one of our sessions, Josh and my session when we were doing it live, said, well, what about what happened to the distribution of income from the beginning of his term to the end of his term? And that's a very good question. We didn't ask that question because, we were doing what he said he accomplished, and he didn't say, well, we improved the distribution of income. So it might be a good question to ask, and it would be a good question for you to ask your students. And you can find that within FRED, the distribution of income in the US. So anyhow, one final thing. What we did as well is one of his regrets was that he wasn't able to balance the federal budget. So we have an exercise, which is a virtual one that, let me see if I can get to it. It's up here. It's so much easier to do this live where we just say, let's flip through the pages, right, guys? I'm sorry for this. So one of the things that is, and this, by the way, is just kind of a useful way of having your students kind of identify. Can you see this federal spending board?
No, we see the lesson outline. So you need to switch screens.
Okay, I'm going to have to share then. There we go. There we go. Okay. So this is a way of having students kind of come up with a view of why we've never been able to balance the US budget. And so what we've done is we took what as part of the lesson, what we've done is we've taken what were the percentage of the federal, and we use percentages, by the way, rather than total amounts, percentage of the federal budget spent on each of the major categories. And if you notice on the red, those are untouchable because they're entitlements. And have the students identify, what percent goes to what by using those dollars. And then at the end of his term, what were the percentages? And then what it's like today. And so that's just a kind of a neat little way of having students come up with lessons on how tough it is to balance the federal budget. And that's in there. So we're done.
Thank you, Anthony.
Are there any questions, comments? Let me remind you, I'm going to put it in one more time. Brittany put a survey in that you're supposed to fill out so that you can evaluate me, get your certificate of participation. But if you want to be entered in the $50 drawing, please be sure to fill out this link. And also, if you fill out this link, you'll be told about any of the virtual sessions that we will have coming up that are sponsored by any number of organizations that we work with. We maintain a list, and just to let you know, October is Economic Literacy Month, And so we have a bunch of things planned for October. So if you are okay with it, we're going to be, I will be sending you information about our activities. Also, I will encourage you and invite you to become a member of the SDCEE Academic Advisory Board. We meet on the first Tuesday of every month at 4 o'clock. We meet virtually, and we meet to decide what would be lessons that we would like to have occur. What are the best times and dates to do those lessons? So if you would join us, and if you go to our website, which is listed here, you will find that we have members of our advisory board from around the country because we meet virtually. One final thing, if you give me that form, I will send you links to all this stuff that I've covered in the session. So thanks a lot for attending. And I'm going to leave early because I'm going to an Aztec football game that starts at 4:30. So talk to you guys soon. Hope you enjoyed this.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Okay, so I just leave, right? Bye, all.
See ya.
See you later.
So I'll make you co-host, Patrick.
Okay, so what was that email used for that has the links? Like the rooms on it?
So with Brittany, so the other Patrick is with me. Does he need to log in first to this, and then you can make him can you have a or host?
He's over the phone, right?
No, he's right here. He's gonna be logging in here in a
Oh.
second.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're just sitting in
Yeah.
my classroom, so we know the network will be
Okay.
fully functioning.
Yeah, if he logs in, then I can do that with make him
Okay.
co-host too.
All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, Patrick Billings will be in there in a second. So he's the other one.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay,